So I genuinely thought I lived opposite a boring, normal industrial estate. With warehouses, vans, maybe some pallets. Turns out, absolutely not. I actually live opposite a cluster of active data centers. And now someone wants to build another one, basically 50 meters in front of my house. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to my Smoke and Mirror series, where I normally talk about shared ownership in the UK. Today, we're taking a little slight detour because this is about a massive planning loophole that affects owners and renters right across London. So let's get right to it. What even is a data center, and why am I so enraged about it? Data center is basically a giant warehouse full of computers that keep the internet alive. It sounds harmless enough until you realize that these things need industrial cooling, insane, and I mean insane amounts of power, chemical systems, diesel backup generators, and yeah, those sound exactly as pleasant as you imagine they do. And that is before we even start talking about construction that can take anything between 2 to 3 years. So I'm not actually anti-tech. I like internet. I use internet a lot, and I use AI quite a lot. I am, however, very pro-sleep, pro-clean air, and extremely pro not living next door to a giant screaming server farm. Normally in London, most data centers are tucked away deep inside proper industrial estates and far away from where people actually live. When I did some research around this, I found 6 major enterprise-grade data centers operating literally within 1.5 kilometers from my house. And this new proposal is 50 meters from my block, which is a building where there's 105, not 50, sorry, 105 flats across 3 buildings. And somehow that's not even the worst part, because on the other side of the proposed new data center, literally 19 meters away from the proposed new data center, there is Wesley Estate, which consists of 240 residential homes. So what am I going to do about this? First, when I received the letter this morning, I emailed my objections straight to KO Data. That's KAO Data. They are the operator that bought the land in March 2026. Now, the initial energy and sustainability plans outline 40 megawatt data center capacity, plus some on-site solar infrastructure on the roof. Now, the land itself is only 19,000 square meters, so that solar power is going to be limited. Now, what does this translate to? It means that this thing is designed to suck up 40 megawatts of electricity constantly from National Grid just to keep its servers alive. And to put that into perspective, 1 megawatt can power roughly 750 to 1,000 homes. So a 40 megawatt data center needs a constant supply equivalent to powering a small town of 30,000 homes at once. And the solar infrastructure, it's not going to generate 40 megawatts. A rooftop solar array of this size might produce 1 to 2 megawatts at absolute peak performance during a very bright summer day. And get this, they want this data center live by 2029. Didn't say when in 2029, but this means we are looking at about 3 years of non-stop construction. That's 6 days a week of heavy drilling, constant dust, backup beepers, pile driving right outside our windows from dawn till dusk, with basically no weekend peace. What else am I doing? In addition, I emailed the Brent and Ealing Council, and I logged my complaint with OPDC. So normally, planning applications go through your local councils. But in this case, local borough rules are basically bypassed. The OPDC, which is the Old Oak and Park Royal Development Corporation, sits directly under the Mayor of London, and here they act as the planning authority, overruling councils. Here is the absolute kicker. The OPDC has already granted outline planning consent for this site under application, and I have to read this one, 21/0182/out OPDC. So, and I'll put it in a description below so that you can reference it if you need to. In planning terms, this means that the big question, should we build a massive 35,000 meters data center 19 meters away from people's backyards? That question has already legally been answered by OPDC, rubber stamping a massive yes. When the OPDC refused the previous owner application last month, they didn't actually reject the data center itself. They just rejected the parts of the design and layout. So the door is still wide open for the new owner, KO Data, to come back with revised plans and get this approved. And why does OPDC love data centers so much? Well, because they literally want the heat they generate. So OPDC recently secured a £36 million in government funding for a green energy network that would use excess heat from data centers that are running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and consume a huge amounts of electricity. It's just bonkers. Basically, they burn a ridiculous amount of power in one place, slap a green label on it somewhere else, and call it sustainability. That's just bonkers. So to the OPDC, our community in Park Royal area doesn't feel like a neighborhood to protect. We are a battery for someone else's green targets. If you want to picture 35,000 square meters, go and Google IKEA Wembley. This data center's footprint is roughly the size of that entire store. Or if you imagine 5 Premier League football pitches stacked on top of each other, that's the same. Because the actual site is tighter, again, 19,000 square meters, this thing cannot just spread out. It has to go up into multi-story industrial block right in front of our houses. And because KO Data built specifically for AI and advanced supercomputing, the floors have to be reinforced to carry incredibly heavy server racks, huge liquid cooling systems. And meanwhile, the ground level footprint gets eaten up by infrastructure that cannot be stacked. Security, cooling yards, heavy duty backup generators. So when KO Data submits updated blueprints in the coming months, I think we can expect a substantial multi-story industrial block dominating on that site. Honestly, I am furious. Look at this picture of the site as it is at the moment. The planning rules there are meant for storage and distribution, and the current buildings on the site are only 1 or 2 stories high. So if you want to modernize, fine. But an environmentally unfriendly and power-hungry, permanently noisy megastructure in the residential area? Absolutely not. How was this allowed to happen without even single current residents being properly asked whether we object? And here is the real smoke and mirrors trick of the UK housing market. The developers slipped this application onto the register in December 2021. The OPDC then rubber stamped the outline principle in July 2022. And the whole process sidelined the people that actually lived in the area. It basically became a paperwork exercise that ticked legal boxes while effectively keeping all of the neighborhood in the dark. First, my current estate, which is called Acton Works, was only completed in summer 2021. So the addresses were brand new, and that meant that they were missing from the council's active mailing list. So if there were even issued any letters, none of them reached the new residents who have barely just moved in and were still unpacking their boxes. Secondly, the families on the established Wesley estate, which is right next door, were never actually directly engaged either, and this is well documented. The developer relied on fine print notices stuck to lampposts and buried in obscure online portals, so no consultation was done properly. And meanwhile, the OPDC approved 37-meter high industrial machines sitting practically on top of the Wesley estate garden walls. Bonkers. Finally, the planners treated the site like it exists in isolation. So they ignored how huge the new facility would add to existing noise, dust, and traffic already coming from all the other data centers, including nearby Microsoft and Vantage developments. The system basically treats us like an industrial dumping ground because this land is designated as strategic industrial land. And to make it worse, they pushed it through using a huge regulatory loophole called Class B8. So the permission is approved for Class B8 storage and distribution. You think ordinary warehouse or self-storage units. The developers tell planners that because of data centers store internet on servers, it counts as a normal warehouse. And let's be serious, normal warehouse does not hum 24/7. It does not throw out heat all day and all night. It does not rely on industrial cooling chemicals that might potentially leach into the water or soil. And it definitely does not fire up diesel generators next to people's bedroom windows. Anyway, look, I'm not trying to start a war with data centers or developers. All I want is to live in peace without an industrial scale, power hungry machine operating right outside of my windows, damaging my sleep, my health, or the environment. And not only for me, but the 240 residents of Wesley and another 105 residents of Acton Works. I'm going to try to muster up some local support. I know there are some groups that already exist, but we are all in this together and people need to push back. So if you live anywhere in the Park Royal area, close to Central Middlesex Hospital, Acton Lane, or the estate where the development is proposed, you need to know that this is happening. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and for listening to me being furious and ranting at data centers. Please subscribe if you want more real-life London housing chaos, shared ownership reality, or whatever else I come across in my daily life. But let's make some noise. Thank you for watching. Good night.